Hey, what's up, everybody? Joshua Danger here. And I've got 3 people in the stream. If you guys could share this broadcast, and also, and I just went down just 1, and now none. If you guys could thumbs this video up, it would be really, really awesome, or even thumbs it down. I really don't care. So, today's topic is retro versus modern video gaming. You know, honestly, I've been doing my research on this, and I've come to realize that modern gaming is a little bit more expensive than most people would know what to do with. Than most people would know. One, retro gaming, the consoles, just to get the retro consoles. What up? What up, Batgirl, aka what up? But as I said, retro consoles are relatively cheap. Even right now, if you go to Walmart.com and you look up the Retron 5, which is actually one of the better clone systems out there for streaming your entertainment, retro entertainment, it's only $100. I think it's like $100 or $120 compared to buying a modern console that's between $203 or $200 and $400 just to get a decent gaming console. You're gonna pay that much, plus the games you're gonna buy. Most of the games are gonna be expensive because you're gonna buy them outright new, and they're probably gonna cost you probably $60, $70, $80, depending on if you want that extra special content, upwards to $100, which, thank you, Batgirljamie. And honestly, to be totally honest, modern gaming is expensive because not only are you buying the game, you're buying the expansion pack, not the expansion packs, but the DLC stuff. That's going to cost you probably an extra $10, $20. If you buy the season pass, it's going to cost you an extra $40. So you're paying almost $100 there with that extra content. Which is where a lot of these modern games really, really get you because, yeah, it's relatively expensive. And when you go into you can pretty much find places to buy retro video games for a decent price. GameStop has a decent price on retro video games, depending on which ones you're going for. If you're going for like the first party stuff, you're probably going to pay a little bit more, but you're probably going to pay closer to $40 or $50 for a used item, which if you go to GameStop and buy a used modern game, you're going to pay that much for it anyway. So for a used, when it first comes out, which, yeah. Sometimes you're not going to pay that much for a first party game at GameStop. Amazon, they charge whatever the retail price of it says on whatever they go for. Like, they say it's worth this much on this website, so we're going to sell it for this much, and we're going to try to get it for that price. And basically, that is what Amazon does. They are not known as being a very, very friendly retro gamer, because retro gamers set the prices on their own stuff, which is why you're seeing the game skyrocketing price. Because just for a game like Super Smash Brothers, you're going to pay a minimum of at least $50. I got my copy for $40 because I bought it used from a friend of mine's sister. But that game is regular $60 everywhere. Even if you buy it used, which it's $60. I've seen it as high as $90 and $120. and also Legend of Zelda Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, I think it was, still up there in price. It's still like, I want to say, like $100 in value. There are games that don't drop in price because they're very, very high end pricing games, like Chrono Trigger and Earthbound, which right now, Earthbound, if I look at my phone right now, I think Earthbound is selling for $186 loose. Loose. And I looked at that, and that game isn't that rare. It came out, and a lot of people didn't know what it was, but when you really look into these things, yeah, there are games that are going to run you up in price because they're so that are going to run you up in price, but they're not going to be half as much as what you're paying for. Yeah, PC games, you can't get them used at all. You really shouldn't buy them used because most of today's modern PC games, you don't even get a CD drive in your computer anymore because of that reason. PC gaming, another topic of modern gaming. You know how much it's going to cost you to build your own modern game console, to build that modern game console for a PC to get all the frame rates that you need to get for it, right? You're going to spend a minimum of $1,000. And majority of that is going to be your graphics card, because you're going to want the top of the line. You're going to want something along the lines of a NVIDIA GTX 1080 Ti, or possibly even a what do you call it? Or even a 2080 Ti, which is still relatively expensive, or RTX 2080 Ti, which is relatively expensive, which is basically just a upgraded version of it's an upgraded version of the GTX 1080 Ti, which is, I want to say it's like $1,300 minimum for that graphics card. Because plus, luckily, the price of RAM's actually gone down, which to get 8 gigs of RAM is only like $40 right now. But most people want 32 gigs of RAM, so it's going to cost them probably closer to, unless you want to get all that RGB colored get lighting put into your game console, which that's going to cost you even more money, because just to get the Trident Z, get 32 gigs of the Trident Z RAM is going to cost you, I want to say it was like $300 or $320 just for the RAM right there, which is, how many people do you know that are going to spend $320 on that much RAM when you could buy a brand new game console for that price? A brand name modern console. Basically, today's day and age, if you have that much money sitting around, you're going to spend it on your frame rates, which you're not going to get with the modern day game consoles, because you're not going to get that 1080 1080p at 60 frame. Well, you might get your 1080p high definition stuff for at 60 frames per second if you spend. But at the end of the day, you're going to end up spending. Most people just buy an Xbox One or a PS4. Yeah, exactly. But it's those diehards that are PC, that are going to be the PC crowd, that it seems like to have a good editing rig and be a game player on YouTube, you've got to have everything upgraded. Which I'm not completely with. I'm like, dude, if I went and spent freaking $2,000 on a computer, I'd be getting looks at like, why the fuck did you spend $2,000 on a computer? And that's exactly how it is. That's exactly what it is. It's like when you could get a modern console for 300 or 400 or 5, which, yeah, of course. Exactly. Exactly. For basically the price of a modern, which if you want to do YouTube, yeah, you're probably going to want to spend extra money. You're probably going to want to spend the extra money to do it, to build a YouTube computer. But you can build a YouTube computer for about $600 to just get your shit going. And a lot of people don't realize that. Matter of fact, you could go on Craigslist or LetGo or Facebook Marketplace and buy a used one that would actually be decent enough for right around $500. That was probably a freaking $1,200 computer 3 or 4 years ago. So that's why I'm saying the price of modern gaming is so ungodly rich. Which, yeah, you could get the games brand new right now on Amazon, modern games on Amazon for between 15 and $35. But at the end of the day, you're paying $300 for a modern game console. Which, if you want to game on an Xbox, it's not like you need that 60 frames per second, because most people's vision can't handle freaking 60 frames per second because, like I said, exactly. Which gaming consoles, which the next gen moderns are actually, I've already done my research on those, and I'm hoping that at E3 I get to see Xbox somewhat get to talking about the price of the next Xbox One, which I've heard it's going to be as low as, I think, $299 for the Lockhart, which is basically, they're basically saying it might be all digital, which I'm perfectly fine if it's all digital, because digital, you really can't beat the price of what you get for digital, for one. That's just that. Like, I've got the Xbox One S all digital set up, and I kind of like it actually, because it doesn't take up much space. Yeah, it's not always better, but it's nice that it's nice to have it, because they're actually talking on the next gen consoles that they're basically gonna just upload the games to the server, which basically is exactly what Steam does. Which, if they go through with that, I think is gonna be a game changer for them. But retro game prices, yeah, you're gonna find those games that are super ultra freaking expensive games that sometimes you might be lucky if you find at a garage sale, or possibly even at a community sale. Sometimes you'll find them there, but knowing if you've got competition, a game store that is in your neighborhood, most likely you might find them at a community garage sale or whatever you want to call those. You might be able to find them there, but most likely you're probably not, because if you've got that much competition looking for them, they're probably going to go into their store and probably sell it to you for regular retail price. like a game like Chrono Trigger, which is $120 used or loose right now, and has never and possibly will never drop in price. And whoever my second viewer is in this stream, please give me a thumbs up because it would be greatly appreciated. So, needless to say, I actually feel that this is the thing about, like, if you look at Sega Genesis, you can literally buy a Retron, I think it's called an HD Mega Drive or whatever it's called, for 40 or 50 bucks brand new from Retron. And the games on the freaking... Hold on. I could give you an example of a game. This game right here, Sonic Spinball. I paid $1 for that game after spending 19 on, I think, 3 other games or something of that nature. I only paid $1 for that game, which Sega Genesis games are cheap as fuck. And if you're looking to try to build a store out from something like that, you want to start with the deadest format possible. When you go into Retron 2 is like $40 too. Yeah. The Retron 5 right now on freaking Walmart is like $100 right now. Which they say that is better for streaming gameplay than anything. And it's like, you know, in a way, I wish I would have bought that, but wasn't needed. It comes with a Sega Genesis attachment. It has a freaking Super Nintendo attachment, NES attachment, slot for it. They all have 3 different slots, plus you can play your Game Boy Color games. You can play, and I think your Game Gear games on it. Which, yeah, when you're streaming something like that, and you want to stream something like that, when you buy the Retron Mega Drive HD or whatever it's called, the Sega Genesis bundle, you're gonna pay another $40 for that anyway. So why not pay the extra $20 for the Retron and get all those other hookups? That way, at least you can play everything that is somewhat retro. Which, like I said, if you go that route, you really can't go wrong, because modern console, you're going to pay between $200 and $300 just for the low-end version of it. Which I wish I would have bought the Retron 5, because Retron 5 is ultra nice. And plus, a lot of YouTubers use that as a to do, like, look at Metal Jesus for a living. Like when he does gameplay for the videos that he does he runs it through a Retron 5 because it's easy to stream it to his computer and through a TV with an Elgato or something of that nature. Which, yeah, you're gonna spend money to make money to do something like that, which, yeah, he makes decent money for his YouTube channel. And I know you don't, Batgirl, but he does it for views, and plus, from what I've heard, he's one of the nicest people you would ever meet. Plus, the only reason you don't really like him and his crew is because you kind of get like, oh, they're freaking what do you call it? Hoarders. Video game hoarders. And I totally get that. You would not be a hoarder like that. I don't think he's that ridiculous. I think he doesn't buy games just to buy them. Maybe his big box PC games, because he worked for Sierra, that computer gaming company. Sierra Online or whatever the fuck it was called. And he wanted to collect the big box games that he does, but every other game that he has, he plays on a regular basis. Which, yeah, it's not like we're much different than he is when we do our collection hauls. So, needless to say, we're all pretty much the same thing. And yes, but look at yourself, Batgirljamie. You've got over 500 DVDs and Blu-rays sitting in your house. Probably closer to 1,000. Maybe not. Maybe slightly over 500 movies total. Yeah, but at a time back in the day you did, you would go buy the cheap movies, and he pretty much does the same thing. It's like, dude, one collection doesn't separate from another collection. Okay. I swear to God, I thought you said you had like 500 DVDs. Oh, yeah. That was at one time. I remember that. But like I said, I digress. That one. But like I said, um, if you could even say that I've got a collection of comic books and toys, and even if you really, really want to say this, you could even say that you've got a freaking vinyl collection that would put a lot of people's to shame, including mine, because like I said, collecting is collecting, no matter what. Do you listen to everything? Do you listen to everything? Do you buy everything for a certain reason? Sometimes, even if you run a store, it's like, dude, you want to buy cheap. You want to buy as cheap as possible at first. That way you can make money back on that product eventually. But I'm just saying, I'm like, unless you get enjoyment out of it, yeah. It's dumb. I don't even watch them. I should sell some towards Mario All-Star. Yeah. If you feel like you don't listen to them, yeah, I would say yeah to that. But just don't go in blind, man. Just if you go in blind and you basically go get retail. Don't pay retail for stuff that's not retail. Yeah, well, 300, right? Do you even know what I have, Jamie? I'm like, I don't even have 300 of anything. I think if you add up everything in my room, I probably don't even have 300 things in this room. Well, I might. If you count all the cable wire, all the freaking wires that hook up to my TV and shit. I'm just saying, I'm like, collecting's collecting, and if you want to have fun with it, have fun with it. That's exactly how I feel about it. Like, exactly. You don't buy something you don't plan on using. And yes, I do what? I don't follow. I actually I've only got like 50 or 60 records in my room. Plus maybe maybe 100 video games, or not even 100 video games anymore. I probably do have. Actually, I take that back. I probably do. I have a decent sized comic book collection. I forgot that. What's up, Barcode? Yeah, I totally blanked out. Like, I've probably got over 300 comic books, and I probably didn't even realize it. What's going on, Barcode? But today's topic is retro versus modern video gaming. I think retro video gaming is relatively cheaper than modern gaming altogether, even though there are games that are relatively high in price, which eventually you're going to see that price as it is. Exactly. That's exactly why I stopped buying comic books, because I literally have a freaking, if I turn my computer right over here, that locker right there probably has all of my comic books in it. So, needless to say, and I've probably got close to 500 comic books. I still have a Sega Saturn, but I'm gonna end up getting attachments to it soon. So I'm actually gonna be getting the attachments, and I think I'm probably gonna end up getting going with a Japanese collection first, because I don't want to pay the ungodly prices for Sega Saturn games. Which, needless to say, right now Sega Saturn game prices, American Sega Saturn prices, are freaking ungodly expensive right now. You can't even touch a cheap game for less than $50. Not yet. Like, that's why I said I'm pretty much going back, and I'm just going to collect the Japanese versions of the games. Very nice. Yeah, it's cheaper. I just got some virtual I used to have virtual on, and I didn't have the twin stick. I would have loved to have that. I kicked myself the day I did that. I loved that game so much that I thought, dude, that game is such a different game. Even for the time, it was relatively rare. And I remember my aunt getting me I think it was Darkstalker's Revenge. I think it was. And I thought, I would love to have that game again, which that'll probably be the first one I buy. Because I know I'm not going to get virtual on for anything less than, I think it's like $100 or something like that. Nice. I even almost completely thought about going with a PlayStation 2 collection. Nice. I used to love the Darkstalker series, which I remember when not Sega. I don't remember if yeah, but Dreamcast. Actually, I don't know about the prices of the Dreamcasts anymore. I think they're relatively low right now for their games. Maybe not. I don't know. I haven't looked at GameStop to see how low their prices are, because their retro game section on their website's relatively cheap as it is. And yeah, you get what you pay for, even though you probably won't get a case for it. But normally the price to get a complete in-box game from anywhere, you're probably going to end up paying for it. Yeah, but that's really, really hard to do, Batgirl. Especially nowadays, when you can just get the mod, you could just mod your systems. Like, it's so easy to mod your systems, and it's so freaking cheap to do it, because all they do is put a switch in the back and that's it. And basically all you would have to do is just hit that switch and basically turn on your console and you could literally play it. The stuff like that. Which I've actually thought about doing that with my GameCube. I even thought about getting the Game Boy player, which I would love to have that as a setup. Which sometime down the line I probably will get it. Because most people don't know I've got the Indigo freaking GameCube, and I really want the Game Boy player. Because I would love to get back into the Game Boy games again. No, wow, really, Barcode? Yeah, like I said, I was always kind of into the Game Boy. My aunt had a Game Boy. And I had a Game Boy Color back in the day. And I thought, dude, that was a pretty cool system. Or a pretty cool handheld. Which nowadays you can get the Game Boys for next to nothing, which every one of the guys that I watch on YouTube that go game collecting at garage sales and stuff, they literally just ask like, hey, do you have any games? Any video games and stuff of that nature that you'd be willing to sell, blah, 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 and stuff of that nature. That's another way of doing things. Like, if they don't have it out in their garage sale, doesn't mean they don't have it and they won't consider selling it to you. What, the Game Boy player? Yeah, I do agree that it was better on the TV. But I've even thought about going with a Sony PSP collection. I thought, dude, that would be a cool collection to have, even though it's slightly more than the Xbox collection. Then again, I wouldn't mind having a Game Boy collection either. Like, my nephew's even getting kind of into the retro systems a little bit because of me playing retro. Basically playing my Retron 2 and my GameCube. I don't know if it does or not. Does it have EverDrive? Does PSP have an EverDrive yet? I don't know if they do, to be honest. I'm pretty sure they probably don't, because it's basically a disc-based system. But I think EverDrive's a little bit more cartridge-based. And there are a few newer cartridges that I really do want to get, but I probably won't cough up the money for them. Okay. Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember you having the Game Boy player, though, Batgirl. I think it'd be cool to have the Game Boy player, actually. Okay. But like I said, I don't know if they have an EverDrive for the PSP, because I thought that was a cartridge-based system. Because I know the PS Vita might, and it might have one relatively soon, because I know they're not making another one. And the rumor that Sony might be coming out with a PS5 that's basically a Nintendo Switch build. I highly doubt it, though. But I don't know. And plus, nowadays you can't even really get anything off of emulators anymore, because Nintendo has literally been killing like every site that does it. And I think PlayStation's about to go the same route. Well, PlayStation and Xbox are going the same route. So basically, unless you're a third party, I think that's the only way you're going to get anything onto a onto one of those. Because I know the PS Vita, Vita's got that. They're doing exactly the same thing as the Nintendo Switch and the what do you call it? The Nintendo Switch and the 3DS, where they're building those cartridges to put into the game consoles instead of because I wasn't even sure what you had to do to get one, because I had the digital version of one when it first came out, and I was like, I thought, dude, I don't really like this, because I was getting all my games digitally on that, and it was like, dude, the cartridges, the PS Vita not cartridges, but the memory for it was so ungodly expensive that you literally had to buy a 64 gigabyte, which was relatively, I think it was like $50 just for the memory stick or the memory card for it, which is ungodly expensive. Yeah. Because just to get a few games on it, it was going to cost you more money than what it was worth. But then they came out with, I think it was the second gen series, the second gen PS Vita, that they switched over to the cartridge that it was almost exactly like the DS and the Switch cartridges and stuff like that. I actually thought it was actually kind of cool when they went the same route as Nintendo did. But yeah, the cartridge games, yeah, they're a little bit more expensive because you're paying for the cartridge instead of paying for a disc or even a digital copy of it, which even if you buy a digital copy of a game, you're probably going to pay right around the same price as what you're going to pay for the game use. So I think it's relatively decent pricing. But like I said, I like modern gaming, but retro gaming is a little bit, I feel, is a little bit cheaper depending on what kind of gaming system you get. Like most Nintendo games you could get for less than $20. Unless you get like Mega Man. I think it's like Mega Man 5, 4, 5, and 6. I think those are relatively expensive ones. Because I think those were the most rare ones from the group. And they had a lower bundle of them. And I think that's why there's so much, like, I liked the Game Gear. Only thing I didn't like about it was the fact that when I had it as a kid, I would go through batteries and batteries. And I think that was the downfall of it. Like, Jesus Christ, like, if you didn't have the plug for it, you were pretty much screwed. And you couldn't bring the plug on a family vacation with you because the family, basically, it would have, obviously, you didn't have the plug wall, the plug for the car, unless you actually used something like that, which they really didn't make those that often. Like, they didn't have those second-rate, what do you call them, cigarette lighter chargers back in those days. and you literally had to burn through your batteries. And I remember, I swear to God, my mom used to throw a fit, like, where the fuck did all those batteries go? And I was like, right in this thing. Literally took like, I think it was 6 or 8 of them, maybe more. I don't remember. I think it was like freaking 10. It was pretty damn close to 10 of them. Okay. But I'm pretty sure you can't beat most games without battery dying for. Yeah, exactly. That was exactly the same thing, which that's why I always said, I'm like, that's why I was so glad that when all the all the last gen moderns came out, all the last gen ones, like the DS, the 3DSs and stuff of that nature, when all of those came with a charger and shit, I automatically felt, and internal batteries, I felt like it was a better thing. Oh, I know, because one, with the Game Gear, you pretty much had to. I think you only had like maybe 40 minutes because it was all full blown color. Because everything was so full blown color, and we didn't have the internal memory, the internal battery packs back in those days. It was like, okay, even when I was gonna say, even when the Game Boy Color came out, that only took 2. The original took like, I think it was 4 or 6, if I remember right. And I was amazed with the color because I was amazed with the color because the batteries were freaking, would last for a couple hours if you just had a couple in there. That's why I really didn't get a lot of handhelds growing up. I didn't really get a lot of handhelds, which, because nobody in the house wanted to buy batteries for anything. And every time that I'd be playing my Game Boy, or my Game Gear, it would be almost dead within the first freaking day. And then I would have to go out by, I my mom would take us up to, I think it was Myers, and she would spend, God, I want to say they were like, for a 10 pack of batteries, it was like freaking $10 or $12 just for one of those. Oh yeah, the one I actually wanted God, what was that system? I was a huge fan of the Metal Slug series. Um and I want to say it was the 3DO. I want to say it's the 3DO. Neo Geo. I was such a huge fan of that, like that Metal Slug all day until I actually beat that game. And I would just pump quarters in there for it. And I was just like, you know what? Honestly, I'm glad that the one up arcades are coming in. Yeah, SNK. I love that. I love that series. Like, even when Sega was porting them over to their systems, I thought, dude, fucking awesome. SNK was a huge deal with me, especially being a Sega fanboy the way I was. I like, I love my NES. I love my Legend of Zeldas. I love my Mario Brothers. I love my Metroids. But when I saw all the games that Genesis was porting over from, I want to say from what we say was the God, what do you call that? The arcade killer. I automatically knew like this is going to be the best day of my life because at the time I had a Sega Genesis and I thought, I'm not even talking about Metroid Prime. I'm like, I grew up in the arcade. And I thought soon as I heard that Sega was porting over arcade games, I was automatically sold on it. Yeah. You still got your Metroid Prime Batgirl? That's why I'm a bigger fan of Sega than I am of NES. Because, like I said, I can only pick like a few games from the NES that I absolutely love. Like the Mario Brothers, the Mega Man games, the Contras, which even back then Contra was starting to come over to support over to Sega too. And I was such a huge fan of like Bad Dudes. I was such a fanboy of Konami that it was just like I swear I wish I was I've got a few years on you, Barcode. Fry's Electronics. Why does that name ring a bell? I remember I think it was 90s. It was either Christmas of 95 or 96. My mom got me and my brother's stepbrother got us the Sega Saturn, and I was like, I thought that was the coolest game system ever. I thought it was the coolest game system ever. Then after my mom died, my dad got us stepdad, he got us the Sony PlayStation, and I still had the Sega Saturn, and I'm like, I told my brother, I'll give you the PlayStation because I loved the Saturn. And I think that's why I'm trying to get back into the Saturn. Like, there's a bunch of games that I absolutely want. Like I want Darkstalkers Revenge again. And plus, they've got a few Metal Slug games on that system too, which I absolutely love. Plus, Virtua Fighter. Plus, God, I can't remember the name of the other one. I want to say it was Virtua Cop. Plus Sega Rally. I had so much fun with Sega Rally that it was like, God. Plus, I had that Clockwork Soldiers or whatever it was. I can't remember. Oh, God. Do you know how much the Sega Master System has gone up in price since your husband's left, Batgirl? That system is more rare now. Really? Well, if you ever want to get rid of those for a decent price, I would definitely pay for shipping. I don't remember playing Enemy Zero, though. Like, I remember I actually had Doom. I think I had Doom and Quake for the Saturn for a minute, too. nowadays you can find the Master System games for Master System games are they're a little expensive, but they're not like super expensive. They're like $20 budget titles. Yeah. Oh, Doom on PC was I actually liked it a little better with on console, but because I don't like playing on a keyboard, which I might just try to find Doom, the original Doom, on Steam, and possibly Duke Nukem. Or it's just the same chick in the game, Laura. Okay. Oh, I know. They're extremely hard to find now. I was watching, God, what was the name of that group? Pixel Game Squad. I was watching them on YouTube, and I thought, dude, the main character, his name is Riff. He got one, and he's been bulking up on his games, and the games are relatively. And he's like, dude, it's a very rare system to find. It's almost as rare to find as a working Sega Saturn now. It's almost as rare as finding a working Sega Saturn right now. So, yeah, I know. Plus, if I remember right, they shut down all the servers too. Years ago. That's the one thing, like, every console had their server time and basically said, we're going to switch over to this server for the next gen, and you guys are pretty much shot. And that's another thing that I don't like about modern gaming. Like, dude, soon as that's the one thing, like, I think Steam will never do that to a PC gamer, because Valve will never do that to a PC gamer, because they know if they have to shut down the servers for that, they will not get any feedback. They won't get any help. No, there was a lot of games for it. There was a lot of games for it. It wasn't a super huge game system, but there was, I want to say, right around 500-600 games for it. Maybe more. Because everybody forgets that Sega Master System came out in like 85, I think. It was either 84 or 85, because I want to say it was it was either same year as Nintendo or it was the year after. And it wasn't much longer after Nintendo came out with theirs or something like that. Duke Nukem on PC was fun, but that was Duke Nukem 3D, which the graphics on it were crap as shit, though. And I think that's the one thing that I absolutely, I go back and I look at, like, holy crap, these graphics were not very good for what you got. And compared to Doom, because Doom has always kind of been that, I love Road Rash. Road Rash was one of those games that I've automatically got to get one of these days, and I'm gonna have to pay up for it. Like, oh, I know, but Doom's graphics really were set apart. Doom and Quake's graphics were set apart from the Duke Nukem's, because the company that Duke Nukem was with was such a content filler. basically they came out with everything. Like, and it was almost instantaneous that they had to deal with Sega, or not Sega, but Sony. Because if I remember right, it was the same company that used to make the driver games. And those graphics were kind of shoddy too. Because if you look at the buildings in those games, they were not very good. I want to say it was a 32-bit or no, it was a 32-bit system because of the CD quality. Because plus Sega Saturn's graphics were actually slightly better than Sega Genesis at the time. And I remember that being completely one of the big things right there. Like, they said the graphics infrastructure was but the Sega Saturn had a lot less games because companies didn't like to build their games on that platform, because they said they had a really weird graphical system that they ran. Or a really difficult physics-based system that they ran on the games. And basically they were running 3D imaging, but basically that's where Sega Saturn absolutely failed right there. Was basically they said they could not do, a lot of game companies would not work with them because they hated the graphics infrastructure. Arcade graphics, I'm perfectly fine with. Like, even today, in today's day and age, indie video game companies are making 8-bit, 16-bit, 8 and 16-bit video games. They're making 8 and 16-bit video games on a PC, which don't take much to run it, for one. And then they port them over as homebrews. They port them over as homebrews to the NES or the Sega or whatnot, and the Super NES. And I think that's what's really, really cool about the fact that having a retro game console, you could do stuff like that. Oh, I totally agree. That I think the Saturn's graphics were actually a little bit better than the PlayStation's graphics, because they were running a lot of their stuff in 3D at Sega was running a lot of their stuff in 3D at the time. And that was remotely what was ahead of the the PlayStation 1. Basically, PlayStation 1 was still doing 2D characters a little bit here and there. But the 3D characters that Sega was building were okay. They weren't great, but they could have been slightly better. And I think when Saturn basically went dead 3 or 4 years after. They literally said, "Nope, we're done. We're coming out with the Dreamcast in '99 because we have to fight PlayStation with the PlayStation 2," which I think they rushed the Dreamcast. And I think they rushed it too fast because they were in between the 64 and the PlayStation 2, and they basically said we had to make up time, and basically they said, well, the Saturn dead format. And I think that's the one thing that I think if they would have given the Saturn a better life cycle, yeah, I definitely think they would have been pretty epic. Because I want to say the Dreamcast came out in 99 or 2000. And I thought about that, and I was like, They only gave Sega or they only gave God, what was that called? The Saturn a 3-year life cycle. And they basically said, we scrapped it because people didn't want to work with us on it. And I thought, because of the graphics infrastructure system that they were running was such a hard code to figure out. I agree. I like I said, Sega fanboy for life. Like Sega's game consoles only had a lifespan of maybe 5 years tops, which I think they were always rebuilding every 3 years, whether or not, and they were building new parts for everything. Like when the Sega Genesis came out, they were already talking like, oh, we want to get the Sega CD out there. Then they did that. That was a year or two after the Genesis came out. Okay, well, now we're coming, I think it was 93. 93, 2 years after that, they came out with the 32X, which, yeah. And then they announced the Sega Saturn right after that, and it was like, okay. Or a couple years after that. And they literally said they were shooting themselves in the foot. Basically, they said they were coming out with the 32-bit system in the Saturn, and they put out the 32X, which I think there were a lot of cool games on the 32X that I think they could have waited for. I think they could have just went cartridge based for their next gen, which they were so invested in CD based because it was going to be cheaper and it was going to be making them more money. Oh yeah, of course. Like if I remember right, I think the game prices were like $60 for most of the games. No, I take that back. I think they were 50 because I think they were slightly higher than the original PlayStation because PlayStation came out with their games for 40, which I was like, their games are $40 and the Saturn games are freaking 50. I was blown away with it. Like, oh, I know. I almost did that because there were games on the Sega CD that I absolutely loved, and now those games are so high in price. Those games were so high in price. Yeah, that's eBay, Jamie. I've seen people pay $100 plus for a Sega Master System. Yeah, you can, but it's so much easier getting the emulators for them because the Sega CD games, yeah, you could get the emulators for next to nothing because nobody's doing anything with them. If you go to Emu Paradise, which nobody owns rights to them anymore. So, and a lot of the companies, they don't really care if you have the older game systems like Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox. Even Xbox really doesn't care how you get your games. They're like, dude, You can literally get emulators of Xbox games put onto your freaking original Xbox. I remember when Toys R Us, huge Sega dealer. They were probably the biggest Sega dealer outside of Funko Land and God, what was the other? EB Games. They were the other one that was the huge Sega dealer. EB Games didn't like selling Sega. They absolutely hated it. And that's why you didn't see a lot of the games in there. They did not like the cartridge-based systems. Plus, they thought the Sega CD was kind of stupid. Toys R Us was the one dealership that basically said, we made friends with Sega because they were lining up their prices. And basically, when basically they said, Sega CD, they're coming out with the Sega Saturn at the time. And they said, clearance, all of them. I swear to God, I had the Sega CD at one time, and I bought one of almost every game that was left over. And I swear to God, there was probably 80 games. Maybe less. I don't remember. I think there was 50 or so. I know there was definitely 50 or so left over. And I was just like, yes, I do remember that too. And I was like, I did not have the 32. I did not have the 32X because that was the one system that I wish I would have had the cartridges for. Because those games aren't really that expensive, but they're not cheap either. I remember I walked out of there. I think I spent probably, I think they clearanced them all out for like $5 a piece, and basically said, you know what, last day of the sale before the Sega Saturn stuff came in, and they clearanced them all out for $5 a piece, and I think I walked out with 50 games, and I think I paid $250 because it was right around my birthday, and I had money to blow, obviously. And I think that was 94. But like I said, I was such a huge fan of it that nowadays you could literally go out and get the original Sega Genesis games for next to nothing. Oh yeah, of course. Like I told my mom, I'm like, I want the new Sega Saturn. Because she knew I was a Sega fanboy, and my dad was stepdad. He was Nintendo guy for sure. And I pretty much grew up around video games. One game I actually do want to get, and I'm going to look for it, is Pitfall: The Mayan Adventures for the Super Nintendo. That is one game that I absolutely want because I remember playing that like a madman. Because I grew up playing the original Pitfall. Like I said, I've got a few years on you, Barcode. And I remember I played that game and I was just like, wow. Like, even for the Atari, I think it was 30 or 2600. I thought, dude, I remember my grandma having that game system, and I would sit there for hours just playing Pitfall. I was like, I thought that was the coolest game of all time until I saw Nintendo. until Mario came out, and I was just like, I don't remember whose it was. You probably wouldn't have liked it, Batgirl. You'd have been like, this game's so stupid. I can't even figure how to jump over a. I can't even figure how to jump over a over a I kind of like the Atari Jaguar. I thought it had some really cool points. Like it almost kind of reminded me, like, dude, they could have easily done the Dungeons and Dragons games on that system, because that was literally the first 64-bit system that ever came out. Or maybe it was because if I remember right, they came out with that, and Neo Geo was coming out with their 3DO, if I remember right. And I remember you couldn't afford a Neo Geo to save your own life. You could not do it. You could not get a Neo Geo to save your own life because it was so ungodly expensive. Even now, it's still remotely expensive. Oh, yeah, of course. The Neo Geo CD came out, and it was like almost dead in the water. Because if I remember right, the first price on that was like Sega Saturn came out at $300. The PlayStation 1 came out at $250 or something. Or no, the Sega Saturn came out for $400. The PlayStation 1 came out at $300, and the freaking Neo Geo CD was like $500 or $600 right at launch. And it was like, how the hell are you going to afford to pay $600 for a game system? And even today, Neo Geo is one of the most expensive consoles to even pick up anywhere. Like, if you find one on eBay that people are actually bidding on, wait for that last 5 minutes, guaranteed. You will see somebody put up $300 every minute for that system. It really does remind you of the Saturn. And it's like, it was almost a stronger system than the Saturn was, actually. I went to, there's a place down in Detroit. I can't remember the name of it. It's Retro Otaku. Retro Otaku or something like that. Of that, they wanted, I think it was, I think it was like $1,200 for that. Maybe it was either $1,200 or $1,500 just for that game system, because it's such a rare game system that nobody ever bought. Plus, they had the Philips. They had the Philips. Not Dreamcast. The Philips. Oh God, what do you call it? The Philips GameCube DVD player set up, and that was like, I want to say it was like $800 for that, because that's a rare system, because it was like the platinum colored GameCube, the guaranteed like real platinum that played DVDs and shit. And I thought, dude, and I think they only made like 50,000 of those or something like that. And I thought, dude, retro gaming is expensive if you buy the really rare consoles. That is the only downfall of retro gaming. Yes, the CDI. The Philips CDI. I actually I still want a Philips CD. I want the. I'm going to look for this everywhere, and I may never find it in the entire my entire lifespan. But I am going to find it one of these days. But I want the original the original PlayStation Nintendo PlayStation or PlayStation Nintendo. And I swear to God, I might even have to search out in California. I'm also gonna be searching eBay for it because one of these days I'm gonna own that. Even if I have to pay a shit ton of money for it. I think it was the Nintendo PlayStation because I absolutely want that. And plus, Philips came out with the CDI, and I remember wanting the Legend of Zelda game. I still want those Legend of Zelda games, the horrible ones that they did. But I want to say thank you guys for coming on here. And I think I'm going to get off here. I didn't even realize I've been talking for over an hour. So. But it's been good chatting with everybody. Have a great night. And remember to comment, rate, and subscribe. And check out my friend's Batgirljamie. And also check out my other channel, the Joshua Danger Experience. And have a great night, everybody. Laters. Oh, and the Juggalettes are us.